Greg and Richard right here on Talking Red.
Hello and welcome to Talking Reds, a Nottingham Forest podcast. Defeat for Forest as the Serbinator suffers a malfunction. I'm your host, Greg Oram, along with my fellow Forest fanatic from across the Atlantic, Richard Spray.
Got Anderson away to the right. Instead he's found Gibbs White inside right channel. This one will count.
It's better. It's hauntingly similar to the first of Forest. Nottingham Forest to confirm. This is too easy. Strike to get behind it.
He hits the derby. Where's Garibaldi? Oh, Nicola.
It's my ode to Nikola Milenkovic being the colossus that he is, but then suffering a little bit of a malfunction, but finishing off part there with, we know that he'll bounce back. Richard Spray, good morning. How are you feeling this morning, Richard?
You know what? I can only explain how I feel with this.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't understand.
Yeah. I mean, Nikola Milenkovic has allowed one bad match out of 38. So, but yeah, I was just like, I told you, I was just sitting there going, kind of with the same facial expressions as when Ross found out Rachel was pregnant. I'm just like, I just couldn't understand what was going on.
I think we all feel the same. Nights like last night make you want to turn off your phone, hide under the duvet, and sulk like a 5-year-old that's lost his favorite dinosaur. Feelings of despair and confusion are easy to succumb to. Losing your mind a little bit comes too easy, and all sense of balance and objectivity goes out the window. It's all too easy to fold and melt down, but now is the time more than ever for clear heads. We don't enjoy doing it, but we're going to look back on a night of frustration for the Reds and be as honest as we can, but without losing the plot. We must remain positive. Later on in this episode, we'll preview the trip to Crystal Palace on Monday night. Oh, yes, the games are coming quicker than the bloke who sits at number 2 in the Bonnie Blue Clue. Can't even speak this morning. It's gone that bad. There's that bad joke gone out the window. Anyway, he's supposed to be here, but he's not. So he's coming late. And that's Danscape joining us. But we do have, at the moment, the random pundit. All going wrong this morning. Can't get my words out. It's the impact of last night on all of us this morning. Danscape hopefully will be with us soon. He's just running behind. So we're calling out to Statman Dan to be here if you can. But Raf the Random Pundit, you're here. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, mate. I think the best analogy is a cheap shot, punch to the gut or even lower, straight in the nuts. And you're not floored, but you've got one knee on the canvas and you can get up, but everyone's kind of looking at you going, what's going on? It feels a lot worse than the reality of probably what it is. But having been to Wembley, had a great day out, and you rationalise, I would say, it doesn't matter. The league's the important thing, which is what I've always said. And you just go, it doesn't matter. We win on Thursday and everything's fine, and we forget about Wembley. And then we have this issue and complete malfunction, of which there were a number of things that I observed, and we'll come on to them later. And then you just kind of just discombobulated as to what is going on. And you know, that it might be player fatigue, it might be many things, but at the moment, I woke up this morning in a real pit, but the sun's out, and I've tried to absorb as much vitamin D as possible in a massive hit of positivity to my system, and it's worked a little bit. So I'm chirpier than I was when I got up.
Indeed, and I feel the same. And one thing I will say is, look, no one said it was going to be easy, and I felt so pissed off last night I could hardly speak. The same as everybody else, because Wembley was a real letdown, albeit we came away feeling, you know, a little bit happier because the second half performance again gave us that optimism that, look, you know, this team can definitely, you know, cause problems for opposition. But last night, again, we were just a little bit blunt, it seemed, and didn't really create much. And I read a stat, I think, that we've gone from, you know, not creating that many chances to creating even fewer chances in the Premier League. And, you know, Chris Wood was thriving off of this amazing XG. And, you know, I'm certainly not pointing the finger at him because I think he's been a legend. But, you know, it doesn't feel like there's needed to be that much of a drop-off for Forest to go from being winners to being losers, I guess, in matches. You know, I think about Southampton at home when we were 3-0 up and only just scraped through to win. I think about Wolves away where we won 3-0, but clearances off the line and them kind of dominating possession for so long. You know, we flirted with flirted in games with results not going our way, and we've kind of maybe come out being a bit lucky, and now the luck's not going our way. And whilst teams weren't capitalising on our poor performances away at Bournemouth and Newcastle, the points gap was still there. You know, they've definitely closed that gap now. They're all winning, and we've obviously gone on a bit of a run now with losing. Don't forget, we did lose at home to Everton, but did bounce back away at Spurs with a 2-1 victory. So let's remember that it's still there. But, you know, I didn't see it coming so much last night. I really thought, especially when the team news broke, which we'll talk about in a moment, I really thought and felt optimistic that, okay, we've suffered a setback at Wembley. The league is the focus. We have 5 huge games to get through. This is the first one. We know that Brentford can be a tricky opponent for us. That's always been the case. But, you know, we should be able to handle them. If you're watching and listening along, thank you for joining us. We've got a few people in the comments at the moment. So Jay is with us, says, afternoon, fellas, hope you're all well. You know, he's hoping we don't completely fall off the rails and miss out on Europe altogether. I don't think that's going to happen, Jay. I think, you know, if we don't get Champions League, I'm pretty confident it'll be Europa. So we'll talk more about that through this episode. Brucey says, good morning, gents and Raf. And also, I want to say hi. A shout out for Isaac Escander. He's asking, can you give us a shout out, please? Absolutely can. And Mark, way NFFC, adding to the pot with a £5. Thank you so much. He says, when adversity strikes, that's when you have to be the most calm. Take a step back, stay strong, stay grounded, and press on. In Nuno, we trust. Come on, you Reds. Absolutely, indeed. Ian in Canada says, good morning, and agrees that Milenkovic had his mare. He did. It was his first of the season. And maybe it just goes to show that when he's not playing well, it kind of does unravel a little bit. I know individual errors cost us against Everton and perhaps a little bit more last night. But let's kind of rewind. We've kind of spoken a bit about our general thoughts to a certain degree. But Richard, when that team came out, and again, it leaked early on, we keep it to ourselves when we get a leak. If you get it leaked to you guys, don't publish it over Twitter. Keep it to yourself. But Aina was back. Nico was back at left back. The team looked strong, and we were all rubbing our hands together thinking, right, here we go, weren't we?
Absolutely. I mean, it was everything we hoped for, right? When we were going through the whole process of looking at the lineup in the preview, we thought, okay, you know, I said maybe we go back 3 if we don't have, you know, Ola come back. But as Raf rightly pointed out, if he was there, if he was able to play and he was fit, do our usual and customary, 4-2-3-1. And that gives you a lot of confidence that that's going to help you certainly be competitive. But I think, as I said in the preview, one of the things that was a little bit, I think, disconcerting for all of us, everyone you could think of in the fan base, is we're just not seeing them string performances together, and in particular in the first half. Because as we know, if they don't come out firing and they don't sustain that in the first half to try to get that first goal, I think we've come back, 2 matches, 1 for a draw, for a win, 1, and then for Brighton, a draw. Those 2 matches are the only ones we've been able to come back and get points out of it the entire season. And I think, as you pointed out, we've been kind of getting lucky to play above our XG a little bit. Just been insanely good from a conversion standpoint. And it's just not falling right now. And that there was just not that last pass, not that nice finish. It just couldn't seem to manifest itself, similar to what we saw against Man City. But it's just these first half stinkers that are just sort of, I think that's the part that worries me. I think this is a very, very strong mental team. And when they, again, play cohesively, as we know, they thrive off of what their manager does and the plan that he puts together. But at the same time, not seeing that first half performance ever seem to come about and not get that first goal. It just seems like if we can't do that at any point in the remaining portion of this match, or find our footing and find a way to come back in the second half, truly come back, not just put in a good performance in the second half, but actually get points on the board, we only have ourselves to blame, as you said, Greg. If we just cannot put that together, as you said a week ago, then it's ultimately our fault, and we just have to accept it and move forward. But as you said, I do believe we'll course correct and put a good performance together. We have to. I mean, there's just no choice at this point. At least get a point at Palace,
Yeah. If you can hear my phone pinging, it's because my friend Serge is watching and he's telling me to smile. Finding it hard, Serge. He texted me last night and says, "Oh, you boys have hit a wall." I'm like, "Yeah, cheers, man." So last thing I want to hear from my Arsenal fan friend who lost to PSG at home the other night, by the way. But no. I love you, Serge. You know I do. And he's watching and he's a good supporter of the podcast. Forest's laboured starts is what I've put on my notes, Raf. I think we mentioned this before. Forest seem to have a habit, and it's standing out a bit more recently, of laboured starts. And it started to do my head in a little bit, because the first 10, 15 minutes again was all Brentford. And so I don't want the first 10, 15 minutes at home to be all Brentford. I know that we play the low possession thing, but that wasn't even us being in a low possession. They had a couple of chances carved out where, on another day they go in and then it's even worse than what it was. So is that really how Forest are going to approach these last 4 games? It was just starting slowly. I mean, we're going to come undone if that's the case, isn't it?
So taking a step back, Brentford's performance is what we did to Spurs, pretty much. Or Brentford did us to us. They came out the traps really fast, caused us a load of problems, we had like 60% possession for a whole chunk of the game, which is so not like us at all. And they hit us with 2 sucker punches where they just took their chances really efficiently. Who does that sound like? That's us. Right. So they were a better version of us than us yesterday. And that's what's galling, because it's also Brentford as well, which really grates. So it wasn't brilliant. And we all do say the first 5 minutes sets the tone of what we're going to expect from this team. We did massively improve, though, momentum wise after the first 15 minutes. But there was one incident that happened nearish the start of the game where I just looked at it and I went, this is so indicative of what is going to happen probably in this game. And the ball had just looped into the 6-yard, I think it was a nothing cross that came into the 6-yard box. Murillo was stood a yard away from Sells in the 6-yard box. And in the middle of the 6-yard box, there was no Brentford player within 10 yards of the pair of them. And Murillo ends up awkwardly with his left foot kind of midair hooking it out for a corner. And I'm just going, why did Sells say nothing and be a little bit more commanding and just go my ball and just catch it? It just super bizarre. And then I just thought, well, right, the comms between those two, not going well. And then we saw the comms throughout the whole game. There were breakdowns in comms, absolutely. Between Murillo and Milenkovic, absolutely comms breakdown. Between the back 4, comms breakdown. In midfield, comms breakdown. Balls that were being passed to where people were not running to, for example, or were a yard the wrong way, or whatever it might be. And it was just everywhere. And you don't need to be very much off it. Like, were we absolutely dreadful? No, we weren't absolutely dreadful. But we were like 5% under where we needed to be, and that 5% accuracy all over the pitch. And 5% in the Premier League, unfortunately, gets you murdered, like pretty much. And that, I think that was the difference. But did everyone look really knackered? Yes. Have we had loads of games in a row? Yes. Have we got another one in 4 days' time? Yes. Have our opponents, and this is something that the kind of church of Paul Morley really talks about quite a lot, and it's about recovery time. And we have been at a disadvantage for the last good few games on recovery time compared to our opponents. We've played 2 extra games since Brentford last played a game, for example. So you can't underestimate how much prep time they had. And we'll come on to the prep time and what it meant. So I really do think it was a mixture of lethargy, slow start, which then compounded everything, lack of energy, lack of comms, and it just permeated the whole pitch, really.
He's arrived. We let you off, mate. We know that you've got busy lives like all of us, but it's good to see you, Danscape. Thanks for coming on. We haven't got that far into it. We were just sort of talking about Forest laboured starts and how it's going to be our undoing if we don't sort of sharpen up from the off. And it looked last night that, you know, we were just, again, just not quite at it at the right stages. I didn't notice. Did you go to the game last night, Dan? Were you in the stadium?
Yeah, I was there, yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, it's we always say it's different when you're watching it in the ground as opposed to watching it on TV. What I know, the ref has come under a lot of scrutiny. You know, he got his card out, I thought, a bit early last night. He set a rod for his own back with that, and I kind of thought one or two a little bit more, a bit soft, basically, is what I'm trying to get to. But once you start giving soft yellow cards out, then, you know, you're setting yourself up for criticism later on. So I'll come to you on the ref. What did you think of him, really, overall? And do you think he bottled it with the second yellow for Lewis Potter, especially?
Yeah, like you said, he definitely handed out the yellow cards too early on. Although the tackles work a little bit borderline because a lot of them were when teams were breaking away, which always adds, you know, the emphasis that it's potentially a yellow card. Like the Gibbs White one was a bit rash. Maybe that summed up actually the performance in that we were sort of trying a bit too hard to do certain things. Like he could have just tracked back with the guy and probably put the pressure on to nullify that attack without having to completely dive in and risk the booking. The Anderson one, again, he did dive in. You know, it was a bit of a lunge. So again, you can see why it's given a yellow. So look, don't get me wrong, later in the game, it was one of those daft situations where he's not giving yellow cards for things that are definitely yellow cards because he's already booked someone. So you get into that ridiculous situation where it's like, well, hang on a minute. You know, why does the rules change later in the game as opposed to potentially sending someone off?
And is the second yellow supposed to be a higher bar? Because I hear people saying, if it's second yellow, it's a higher bar. It's not, is it? A yellow card is a yellow card. It's not supposed to be, you know, if I hadn't booked you already, I'd book you for that. Surely it's like a second yellow or a yellow card is a yellow card, isn't it?
For me, it should be. I mean, there's a little bit of context to it, but I think it was Norgard who did the one where he was slightly off the pitch and he kind of chopped back into Yates and took his leg. Like, for me, that's a yellow card all day. You know, if you're going to do that, that's like disciplinary kind of thing where it's petulant, whatever, a bit violent and all that. I think that's a definite yellow. The Lewis Potter one is like the other side of the pitch to me. But I said to my brother, I don't think it is because I don't think he sticks the leg out or anything. He's just kind of there. And I always find that sometimes those are harsh because if a player goes past you and you're just there and they sort of run into you, like you can't disappear. So as long as you're not making it, and I haven't seen it back, I haven't watched it back.
Kind of like stepped into the path.
Okay, so then maybe it is. Yeah.
The second one was on Aina as well. So the first one was the Alanga one where he didn't even look at the ball and he just barged him. And I tell you what, if his shoulder had been just a touch high, you might even be going for red card for that one alone. But the second one was the Aina one, and he did move across him and blocked him. And I just think that I'm not saying that I wanted it desperately to be a yellow card, red, off you go. I'm not surprised he didn't give it, and I probably would have been a bit surprised had he done a yellow card. Do you know what I mean? I'm in that kind of zone, but I've slept on it, and now I want it. I'm thinking, actually, you know what? I want it.
Well, I think back to Niakate got sent off at home against Brentford, didn't he, for 2 yellow cards? And I don't think his 2 tackles in that were worse than a couple of tackles that players did in this game. You know, for me, I think they were similarly kind of like on the borderline of being yellow cards, but he got sent off anyway. So yeah, the referee definitely got a lot of stick, and he did make it difficult for himself with the yellow cards coming out so early and so quickly. And it but it was an interesting game in that the tone was different than I expected. It was a little bit niggly early on. There was definitely a little bit of back and forth, and I don't think we didn't come out with intensity. We just didn't have quality last night for me. You know, it wasn't so much about effort, intensity, being up for it. We were trying to take the game to them, but we were also rushing our passes. We were being a bit too impatient, trying too hard almost on the ball, and nothing really worked, you know, in possession for us, I think.
I want to say hi to Stevo is with us in the comments. Wake Up News thinks that a wing and a striker would have made a lot of difference and talks about the January window being a problem from a Forest point of view. Good evening over in New Zealand to number 8 Dog. Thanks for joining us from down under. Great to have you with us as well. And the legend that is Stu Freestone, the chief trader, is in the comments. Hey, Stu, good to have you with us, buddy. I'll get the ad on very soon if I can, I promise. Richard, Callum Hudson-Odoi. Now, we are at our best with those two wingers firing on all cylinders. And even before the 20-minute mark, when he tweaked the hamstring, I said to Orlando, I said, I'm not quite sure Callum's quite at it. But then he seemed to tweak, and then we saw pictures on our TV feed of Dominguez putting his pads in and thinking, well, you know, Dominguez looks like he's coming on, and then it didn't happen. So are you able to kind of give your opinion as to why you wouldn't haul Callum Hudson-Odoi off at that point? And then why also would you bring Dominguez on? Why not Sosa? Sosa seems to be the one in my eyes. I'm going to go and answer my door while you answer that, Richard.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a little bit perplexed with Callum. I mean, if he's injured, I mean, you clearly have to take him off, but I agree. Sosa should have been the choice. I think Sosa offers a lot more than we give him an opportunity to show. He tends to kind of come in really late, and so it doesn't really give him much of a chance to get into the game and really, I think, provide, you know, evidence of his quality. I think he's a really good player, actually, and he's had some nice goals this season. As Dan's often said, I think the difference between him and Jota, other than the insane frenetic nature of how Jota plays, is that because I think, yeah, well, there's that too. The Angry Bird eyebrow certainly sets them apart. But I think it's also just the way how composed Sosa is on the ball, and how he has a little bit. I mean, Jota's got some finishing in him as well, but I think the goal scoring ability too. He's just got a little bit more Callum-like style to him. And for whatever reason, though, for Callum the second half, what I had hoped it was going to happen is similar to what we've seen, what we saw last season, which was where he had that second half surge, and he became a huge part of what, you know, kind of kept us in the league. You know, those additional goals, those beautiful shots that he tends to get, as we know, that trademark that he has, that's just not coming. And I'm not quite sure what it is. I mean, I'm sure if I spent more time and gave intent to looking at him specifically, you know, in each match, that just doesn't seem to have the same energy, the same sort of acuity level to diagnose when he needs to cut in and when he needs to just launch it. It just doesn't seem to be there for whatever reason. And if it's just a combination of a lot of minutes played coupled with, you know, maybe some nagging injuries that he's been trying to play through, just so he's present and he can give that steady presence that he tends to have, and that ability on the ball that's so tidy and brilliant. Great. But at this stage, I think someone put in the comments, I think Callum will be out for the season. I mean, there's not many games left, so that wouldn't shock me, I guess. But if that's the case, then we need to showcase Sosa, because we don't know where we're headed. We all have said, you know, Raf and I and others thrown Madueke out there, thrown different winger options out there potentially in the offseason, because I do think there needs to be a quality improvement in terms of just a couple % better in terms of the players that you're offering on the bench, especially if we get in Champions League, as we've oft said. But I also think, you know, we don't know what's going to happen with Alenga, because I mean, he may be one of those players that gets sold, so we maybe retain a Morgan Gibbs White or retain a Murillo. You know, so having Sosa giving him a shot certainly showcases him, and I think he's got enough quality to play. I don't know if he's elite, clearly, if he's truly fully quality Premier League starter, but we won't know if we don't give him enough minutes. So I think that needs to happen, because he seems like the most natural guy to sub in for him and not lose a ton of ground, even if he's not quite the quality that Callum is.
I want to see Sosa getting more of a chance, and I'm a firm believer that players who are on the bench always get better when they're on the bench for a period of time and the team starts to not do so well. I've seen lots of call outs for Sangare. Oh, let's give Sangare a chance. It's like no one was calling for Sangare to be given a chance like 2 or 3 weeks ago. It's like now that the team is suffering a little bit, he's the answer. Sangare isn't the answer. Sangare, sorry, is not the answer at all. Sosa might have to try and be the answer in the absence of Callum Hudson-Odoi. If he's tweaked his hammy, then with 4 games left, there's every chance that he doesn't play again this season. And one thing I like about Sosa is that in the very limited game time that he's had, both in the Premier League and the FA Cup, he scored goals. He's had limited chances, he's had limited minutes, but he has scored for us. So, you know, I think about Everton as well when he actually came in late last minute and nearly scored, you know. So for me, Sosa, I want to see given a chance. We are going to be previewing Crystal Palace in the second half, and time's moving on. So, Raf, take us through the sucker punch goal. I mean, to me, it looked like Brentford had paid attention to that long ball coming from the back, going into because it's the same kind of goal that Rodgers scored against us with Villa when the ball came over into that same area, player running in from the left, and it's almost like they've identified a weakness. But for me, again, Milenkovic's having a malfunction, and Einer's not reacting quick enough. There was the slip, of course. Sucker punch, right?
Massive sucker punch, but it's schoolboy. The whole thing is it's a schoolboy long punt. It's Wimbledon from back in the day in like the 60s of just like long balls over the top that then proved to be effective. And they did allude to in the interviews that Wissa and some Viking, no, it wasn't. It was Collins, Irish guy that they did on Sky. And they said they had ages to prepare for this game and they looked at a few things and there was a wry smile on Wissa's face where evidently they've ID'd a way that our comms and organisation is a bit off. My issue is, even though the player's coming in from the left-hand side, right, and they were on Aina, by the time they make a connection with the ball, right, they're just running. By the time the ball gets to them, they're on the centre circle. That is a central defender's responsibility, right? And how, with a long ball over the top, both of them were dead balls, right? Pretty dead balls that were going over the top. How can you not be set as a defence, as a central defender, to cover off any ball that gets launched towards your box? It just doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. And in both goals, Milenkovic gives up running. But for both, that he ran a bit harder for the second one with Wissa, but realised he wasn't going to get there and puts his hands up, I think, as the open comms to Sells to go, it's on you, buddy. I'm out of gas. I got nothing here. But again, do you know what? If it's that key and you're outside the box, make a bit more of it. Maybe you're going to get sent off, I guess. I don't know. But it's 101. Ball comes over. If the ball bounces, you're into jeopardy anyway. And what I have noticed, what is happening increasingly, and Milenkovic did it a bit, Murillo loves doing this, and it's getting more and more frequent, is playing the man and not the ball. And they love shouldering the opposition, not going for the ball, but just knocking it and finding that fine line with the referee, basically fouling the opposition, but getting away with it. And the ball goes through to Sells kind of situation. And for the second ball that came over the top, that is exactly what Murillo was doing. Didn't even try and head the ball, just tried to dislodge the player who knocked it through to Wissa, and then the whole thing goes wrong as well. So we lament going back to basics. This was a fundamental breakdown of the basics. It's harsh on Ola, and he needs to check his studs because he was falling around quite a lot during that game. But at the end of the day, it's unfortunate, and he actually did a lot more than I thought he was going to do in his first game back.
Yeah.
And it's a huge positive to see him come through and him twisting and turning quite a lot out of situations with no ill effects as well. So that is a huge positive. But those two goals were just, you can't really break them down more. It's just central defenders not doing the basics and more intent. It's not to just go head the ball and be in the right place at the right time. And they just didn't do those things.
I was happy with Ola Aina. He obviously, I mean, Ian was saying in the comments a moment ago, he was fit, but not match fit. Well, he's not going to be match fit because he's not played, but he's got to come back and get match fit by playing matches, getting 75 minutes out of him. And I thought a good 75 minutes.
Wiggling through players.
Yeah, I know, he was brilliant. He had his mouldeds on, though. That was the problem. He needed to get his long studs on. And
he also put more crosses into the box than I think anyone else did that were half decent.
And Ola Aina in the condition he was in last night is still our best option out of all of our, even with match fit others. Okay, Dan. Obviously, Raf has touched on the Wissa goal as well. Second half was really all about trying to come on the attack, and it looked like we were trying to do that. But when Wissa scores on the 70th minute, it was like another punch in the gut, takes the wind out of you. What did you make of Nuno's subs though to kind of counter all of that?
I'll tell you what's interesting is I didn't notice Hudson-Odoi being injured in the first half at all. But I think I was having one of those games where I wasn't paying that much attention because I kind of missed the first goal as well, because I think as soon as I saw it was just a long ball, I kind of like switched off a bit. I was like, yeah, we deal with them all day. And then all of a sudden you see someone bundle it into the net. But I never saw Hudson-Odoi injured. So at halftime, I thought it was a strange substitution to take Hudson-Odoi off that early for Dominguez. Obviously, in hindsight, it must have been an injury. So it was a strange one, but I don't see it as a bad thing, because it's basically the point of that isn't that we suddenly think Dominguez is going to be the attacking threat. It's that it frees up Elanga, because I noticed in the first half we were very separate. Our front four, there was a lot of space between them. Elanga was very much staying on the right. Hudson-Odoi was staying on the left. I think it was deliberate to try and pin their fullbacks back, but it meant we were very disjointed. Gibbs-White never got very close to Chris Wood for the knockdowns and stuff, so it was hard for us to ever build anything. And where we've been better lately is when Elanga can float and he can be the extra man, so we can actually get hold of the ball somewhere near the halfway line. So it wasn't suddenly like, oh my God, you're bringing on Dominguez. It's a defensive substitution. I think it allows Elanga to then start floating because Dominguez fills in and Gibbs-White can get a bit further forward when he needs to, and it's a bit more flexible. So I wasn't suddenly against it.
But what about the game? Sorry, the Awoniyi sub. And I'd have liked to have seen Jota Silva coming on to go up top with Wood, for example.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I mean, it's either or. Look, Taiwo's not in a good position. You know, you don't sort of, when he comes on, you're not expecting him to score at the minute. Unfortunately, I think he's just one of them. What other options have you got that's sort of at least semi-proven? That's, you know, he should be a goal threat. Again, I think if I was playing Football Manager and I'm chasing a game, I'm going to bring Taiwo on. You know, I feel like he's got to just bundle something in every now and then. You're just hoping that moment of chaos comes from him, because he should be able to do that. I think it kind of worked later on with Jota coming on at right back, effectively playing a right wing back role. He got involved, but I just find it hard to say, well, what else would you have done, you know, differently? I wouldn't have probably ever thought about bringing Jota on to play up front with Wood. I just think it was a shame that on the night nothing linked, nothing worked. Anderson didn't really get going in the game. Gibbs-White was just trying too much all game, I thought. And it just felt, after the second goal went in, it did just feel like one of those nights where, yeah, it was over after that goal. Unfortunately, it felt like to me, because we just hadn't shown any quality all night. I think the only chance I would say is that Chris Wood header. On another day, we've seen Chris Wood score those little headers this season, and that might have been the only chance, which was an Ola Aina cross. But other than that, I don't think we created a good chance, as you say, in the box, even with two strikers on.
Yeah, Dan, very quickly on Ando, I actually thought he was our best player for the first 25 minutes. He was absolutely everywhere. He was getting tackles in, and he was the one trying to actually carry the ball out of places and make stuff happen. He was overamped, and it was youthful exuberance. And then he got booked, and you saw about 20 seconds after he got booked, he was still yelling at the ref and shouting at the ref to wake up. Okay. And you were just like going, oh my gosh, this is like a car crash waiting to happen. And he just didn't de-escalate. But again, no one around the pitch was into him as a really young player to go, calm down. And I wasn't surprised he got hooked, because it was a disaster waiting to happen by the end of it.
Yeah. I mentioned Jota maybe as a forward option, because I liked what he did against Villa. I thought he was that little kind of Jack Russell that we know he is, and was maybe that's what we needed. My faith in Taiwo was unfortunately, diminishing more and more and more. It was a very disappointing night. We've got 4 more games. We still sit in 6th. We are on the same games. The points difference between 6th and 3rd is like 1 or 2 points again. So there's still lots to play for. We have got a biology lesson in the comments for Raf. who says, by the way, you don't absorb vitamin D, says Simon. There's no vitamin D in sunlight. It just stimulates vitamin D production in your body.
Thanks,
And
Simon.
on that note, we're going to take a very quick break.
The Cheese Trader, based on Grape Lane in York, is a cheese lover's paradise. Home to some wonderful specialty cheeses, relishes and chutneys, and also with a fantastic street food menu. Try their loaded fries or posh cheese on toast. It'll be the best you've ever had. Owned by Forest fan Stu Freestone, the Cheese Trader proudly sponsors Talking Reds. Quote Talking Reds every time to get 10% off your order. The Cheese Trader and Talking Reds, the perfect cheesy mix.
I'm not sure if Stu's still hanging around in the comments, but he is a legend and he is the Cheese Trader. And you know what to do. The links are in the bio. Give him a call. Get your cheese from Stu. All right. So we want to look forwards as ever. It's tough, right? When you lose a game, it's tough. We want to try and be upbeat. We're not going to be like happy clappers, right? I know that a lot of people, you've got to be happy clappers and everything's positive. Listen, we'll call it as it is, right? Where we can. But at the same time, there's no point in us coming on here and being all negative Nellies. It's not going to get anybody anywhere. So we want to try and see the positives and have that belief. What I do think is that, look, we've overachieved and the squad that we've got is now showing that that depth is causing us an issue when it comes to trying to get over the line. When you have those injuries that come up and when you're trying to get something out of games, we just don't have the depth, and certainly not the depth that Nuno trusts in. So we are pulling together, and we've got to do our bit as fans to pull together as well. And I know that all those fans in the stadium last night were doing their bit, and those travelling on Monday to Palace will do their bit as well. Palace is a difficult place to go to. We don't seem to get anything out of there other than draws in recent times. I've been to the last two, and it was a 1-1 at the end of the season and a 0-0. So I'm hoping, obviously, that we'll get more than that this time round. What we'll do is we'll kick off looking at the game coming up against Palace by doing this.
I'm a stat man. Fazendo som, Pedrinha Moraes fazendo som, e Pedrinha Moraes fazendo som.
Okay, Danscape, we use your stats as a little bit of a platform to kind of talk about the upcoming game as well. So what have you got for us on slide one, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, this first one probably relates mostly to last night's performance as much as anything. Big chances that we've created over this course of the season is like a 6-game average. And you can see our peak obviously came up to that Brighton home game, 7-0. Then whatever happened in Dubai since then, we've decided to have a little dip in our chance quality. And we are now sort of as low as we've been this season, basically, in terms of the number of big chances we're creating in a game, which is less, well, it's pretty much on one a game. So we're getting one big chance a game. Our best at over the whole season has been 2.5, big chances a game on average. So that's our, obviously compounded by the defensive mistakes. But at the minute, I think what's frustrating is that we aren't creating too many good chances for Chris Wood or others to score.
Decent chances created.
Yeah, so this just sort of sets the bar a bit lower in terms of what you consider, a decent chance as opposed to a big chance. And you can see again, it's still obviously dipping back down to like three to four decent chances a game, having been at like five previously. So again, just overall struggling to create chances.
Okay. So more about Monday then in detail with the form comparison.
Yeah. So you'll be pleased to see on the right-hand side, to start with, is that Crystal Palace's form has dropped off a cliff, luckily for us, at this point in time. So hopefully that continues. This is obviously league form, not their performance in the Cup. So they haven't won in, 4 games? They picked up a couple of draws, but from where they've been at the high, where the line is nice and green for them, they are trending back down to their form as it was in that first sort of quarter of the season when they really struggled. So, look, it's only a 6-game period, but and they've played some tough teams if you look at the fixtures there. But it's showing that they're not in a good place, and their form is worse than our form on the left. So although we feel all downbeat, we're actually in better form than they are over the last 6 games.
Richard, when it comes to Palace on Monday, so their form lately in the league, as Dan is showing us, hasn't been great, but they've got the FA Cup to think about. They've got the final. They beat Villa convincingly. And I thought to myself, blimey, if we go up against that Palace, then we're going to get blown away, because I thought they were outstanding at Wembley in the semi-final. So with one eye on the cup final, are you hoping that they're going to be resting some players? I mean, Eze's got a couple of injuries up his sleeve. Maybe he's on limited minutes. You know, their form in the Premier League has been iffy lately. Are they going to be too worried about that, knowing that they've got bigger fish to fry in the cup?
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, I'm sure Raph will get more into the details of what Glasner wants to do in terms of how he wants to set up typically and who he's going to deploy from a personnel standpoint. But I could certainly see that happening. I doubt it will. Maybe they'll do some sort of, management of minutes, depending on how the flow of the match is, what the flow of the match is. But you're right. I mean, they're challenging because they can play that low possession game and capitalize when moments come. They certainly did that against Villa, because it seemed like Villa controlled a lot of the ball. They retained the possession, but similar to what we've had struggles with the last two matches, they just couldn't convert when the opportunities came, and there really wasn't a ton of opportunities, a ton of big chances for them. So hopefully we can kind of reverse that trend and do what we did, like Raph mentioned at the beginning of the episode, where he said, we did to what we got done to us by Brentford was what we did to Spurs, and hopefully that's the kind of situation we can get ourselves into. I mean, that's not always a guarantee, but certainly I could see why Palace might be thinking about that, because that puts them in Europe, right, by getting that victory. So I can understand why they might want to manage those minutes a bit, maybe switch some things up, just as they want to have the opportunity to kind of capitalize and focus in on the cup.
Well, let's hope so. Okay, thank you very much. Back to you, Dan.
Yeah, so just comparing the goal scoring, so goals for, again, over like a 6-game average left to right. And I suppose just focusing on Palace, we sort of know we're struggling to score goals from where we're at. But again, for Palace, it's dropped off again from their peak form, since they've obviously had some tougher games there, the likes of Brighton, Man City, Newcastle, Bournemouth. They've been struggling to score more than a goal a game. So they're not, they're just not flying in the attacking sense at the minute, I suppose, to highlight on that one.
Okay, and let's go to the next slide.
And then on the other end, good for us is that the line goes up for Palace on this one. So again, this is goals against, 6-game average, and they've absolutely shot up. So they've had their little run where they're conceding less than a goal a game there, and then all of a sudden you get to these last 6 games, and they're now conceding, over 2 goals a game on average, almost getting up to sort of 2.5 goals a game on average, which is as high as our worst period of the season, if you like. If you think back to our worst period at Newcastle, Fulham, and that's sort of the form defensively they're in at the minute. Whereas most of the season we've been doing well, and what's strange for them is that most of the season they've actually been pretty good defensively, but all of a sudden they've started conceding goals, which possibly partly goalkeeping performance, but something we can definitely target.
Okay, and then the chance quality comparison you've got for us as well.
Yeah, so chance quality, I guess, links a little bit back to the big chances and things like that. You can see on ours, it's trending down, and the little grey line in the background is last season's chance quality over the same period of the season, and we're even lower than that. So, in an attacking sense, we're actually creating better chances last season than we are this season at this point in time. But you can see for Palace, that's one area of strength, is that when they're perhaps not creating as many chances, but when they do, they are still creating some good quality chances. And I think at the minute they're sort of top of the form charts over these last 8 games for the quality of chances they've been creating, but they haven't been converting them. That's what isn't shown here, is that they're having a little period of missing chances at the other end, and also letting in a few goals that they probably shouldn't at their end, which is why their results have dipped from. They had a really good period where they were massively exceeding their expected goal difference, but now it has turned again for them. So despite all the doom and gloom, I suppose I'm just trying to say that we are playing them at a good time. They're not league form-wise, they're not in a good place, and you've got, like you said, that distraction of the cup maybe.
Excellent stuff. Thank you very much indeed, Danscape. Okay, right. So we want to focus next on how we might set up Richard. So we'll put the foot mob on the screen, and then we'll have a couple of minutes on this, and then we'll get the scouting report from Raf as well shortly. So let me just share my other screen with you. It's been one of those mornings this morning where I haven't got everything in place as I would like it, as I usually would. There we go. There's the FOP mob showing the team that started last night, which was, as everyone knows, Aina back at right back, Williams left back, Murray Milenkovic, Anderson, Yates in midfield, Hudson-Odoi, Gibbs White, Alanga, and Chris Wood. Now, I don't think Hudson-Odoi is going to play. I think let's suggest that they're not going to risk him. I'm going to quickly jump in and say that I would play the same team, albeit without Hudson-Odoi. It's who comes in for him. Do we bring Dominguez in and go to a 3-man midfield, or do we give Sosa that chance? I know what I would do. What would you do, Richard, or would you change it entirely?
Yeah, I'm somewhat stuck between two minds. One is adding the defensive capability that because they've got a good midfield, don't they? So it'd be interesting to maybe have Dominguez sort of operate as sort of a winger in some moments, drop back and play in the defense and pack the midfield a little bit. So that was one. But I kind of like the idea of just sticking to what we know we can do. It's just finding a way to penetrate and get that last touch in the box and get that better chance. I know that's easy to say, harder to execute, right? So I kind of almost would put Dominguez where Yates is, and because they have some athleticism to their midfield, and well, Ryan's a pretty decent athlete himself, and he can be very physical, as we know. That's one of the values of him. That's also a really good option right there, is to maybe capitalize on having Yates still on the pitch and having Anderson in that left wing position, potentially to also drop back and play defensive in the midfield, but offer that what he does on the ball in that wing position. Yeah, I actually kind of like that. Thank you for guiding me towards a better option, Greg. I appreciate that. Yeah. So yeah, we've got Wood up top. We've got Anderson on the left. We've got Gibbs White in the 10, Alanga on the right, Yates in that sort of 8 position, and then Dominguez in that pseudo 6, and then Williams, Murillo, Milenkovic, and Aina. That seems to be a really nice, I think, sort of balance of giving opportunity to get into the box, because we know Anderson can do that, right? He's good on the ball. He can get into the box and maybe create something. His finishing and his shooting is a bit, lacking at the given moment, but that's hopefully something, as Raf's pointed out before, that will progress in his, time as he grows as a player. So yeah, I like that. I think I'd go with that. Okay.
So Raf, I'll come to you for this, because the options don't seem to be that plentiful. Is there a case for Sangare? I mean, I don't think there is. Is there a case in your eyes for Sangare? Is there a case for the question we always ask, which is a back three? I think Milenkovic against Mateta suits him better than Milenkovic against a nippy player like Wissa. What are you thinking when it comes to? Do you like the look of that team, the 4-2-3-1 still? Where are you at, Raf?
Well, I guess a lot boils down to, are we going to play our game, or are we going to try and tactically adapt to what they've got? And I think those are two very different outcomes of what we want to do. I do, though, again, we've done well when Nuno's gone to the tactics bag and really, really matched up well against what the opposition's doing. And we nullify them for 45 minutes, and then we kick in to do what we want to do, and we come out with a win, which is kind of, that is our optimal way of working, I think. They have got a lot of threat effectively pretty much wide, because they've got wing backs that push up and are very dangerous. Like their 2 wing backs are probably up there with some of the best wing backs in the league. And then you've got a very combative and skillful midfield, but that can create a midfield 4 effectively. So we need our numbers. If we do this, Anderson's going to have to effectively drop into midfield 3, with Gibbs White also dropping back down, Alanga then floating. And I actually think that I quite like that idea of the personnel. To the Sangare question, I don't think he starts. There's no point experimenting now this late in the season. So I like the personnel that are here. And even if Callum was fit, and it wouldn't surprise me if you see him on the bench, if he actually had a hamstring problem, he would have been hooked straight away. He carried on playing for another 25 minutes, and they probably took him off precautionary wise, I would imagine. But also Callum's mentality is, he's got PTSD from injuries, right? If he's feeling something, he will want to probably go off. But I think he probably said, keep me on, and then they precautionally took him off. So I wouldn't rule him out for the rest of the season. I'm not a doctor. Anna, if you're on, shed us some light on the situation. But the fact that he carried on for another 25 minutes with something hamstring orientated doesn't seem to be that bad, Ben.
That's good.
I like this. I wouldn't start both wingers anyway. I like the personnel, and I'd have the four, basically a midfield four, with Gibbs, White, and Anderson being able to like create a kind of box where those two can go forward. But the key for me then is Elanga's not fixed on one wing. And like Rich, you were saying about, you know, Elanga floating around, which is where we cause damage. Yesterday, for over 40%, 45, 50% of our attack went down first half on the right-hand side where Elanga was playing, second half the left-hand side where Elanga was playing. If you look then what happened, he was getting double-teamed, triple-teamed the entire time. And it's very easy. And this is why Callum hasn't been that effective, because when we split the two wingers, they know what's coming and they double down wherever the ball is and they just float across and double-team whoever's on each wing. So it works well. And this is where the success has been recently, is when Elanga's come to life is when he floats. And that can be enabled by having a midfield four, as far as my inexperienced managerial cap goes. What do I know? Nuno's the expert. But so I think it is this formation. I just think it's more like a 4-4-1-1. And it's a little bit more like that.
And didn't we do the box thing against Spurs as well? If I remember correctly, didn't we?
4-2-2, wasn't it? 4-2-2.
Yeah. And I think it ends up being something very, very similar. But what it allows us to do is squish it into a 4 to cover off their marauding wing backs, as well as cover the two in the middle, because they will form a 4 to sit behind their effectively 2 10s.
Danscape, anything different from you, mate?
No, I was thinking about the back three, match them up. Looking at their formations, they've literally played the same formation the entire season, apart from
except for the cup game.
Well, even that's on here on FB Ref. That's even put as a 3-4-3. Like literally every game is 3-4-3, apart from when they came to the City ground, where it's down as a 3-1-4-2, slightly different. But I think that's probably the only team that consistently has played the exact same formation throughout on here. But I was thinking, do you match them up? But then I've looked at the results when teams have tried to match them up, and Palace have won every game. So I think it's kind of like they're better at doing what they do. So we've got to be better at doing what we do and stick to our preferred formation, which is, the 4-2-3-1. I would probably change it. I would probably say I'd go Anderson, Yates midfield, Dominguez on the right, Elanga on the left. If Hudson-Odoi is out, if Hudson-Odoi's fit, I would play him. But if he's injured, then I think I'd do that. And because you've got to deal with the 2 10s, you've got to deal with that. So you've got to have that extra potential body in midfield, and you might even see a Danilo in this one. He's had that extra bit of rest. You might see Danilo, I think, because you need that body in midfield to deal with their 2 number 10s that sit behind the striker.
Yeah, it's if he'll engage though. That's the problem. Will he actually stick his foot in? Will he play physical? That's the concern.
It is.
Sorry,
yeah. And as ever, we're fans. It's a fan channel, fan podcast. So yeah, we're not specialist managers and that kind of stuff. We're giving you what we think we would do and what we hope to see and all the rest of it. But one thing we do like to try and do is bring you a little bit more of a closer look at the opposition. So here's the scouting report.
Send them back to East London! Send them back!
I hope anybody's not stupid enough to write us off.
Okay, Raf, let's see what you got for us, buddy.
Cool. Well, as Dan just alluded to, Palace are very predictable into the type of formation that they will deploy. It is actually. I can't even read my own stuff. It was exactly the same in the cup. Anyway, sorry, Dan. Yeah, you're totally right. I did this very early this morning when it must have been very blurry-eyed. And so we know what we're going to get. So for those listening in rather than watching, what we've got is Henderson in goal, because good old Turner, he's injured anyway. So it is Hendo, definitely Hendo in goal. They can't really rotate. Then you've got a back three that's it's pretty settled. You're going to have Gui when he's fit, and he is fit now. Lacroix's come in and actually been pretty good, and you've got Richards. And when Richards is fit and okay, he is going to play over Lerma pretty much. So you'd expect that to be a very solid back three that sits there and protects Henderson. You are going to have the troublesome wingers of Munoz on the right and Mitchell on the left. And they both create their own problems that they have. They are very tricky. And Munoz is also quite a goal threat. He is a big box crasher. He loves just appearing in the box, and he has got a decent shot on him as well. Mitchell's less of a goal threat, but he is absolute lightning, and he loves an assist as well. So getting crosses in. So those two need to be watched. Then we've got, which is my buzzword, the engine of everything that then happens. And you've got Wharton, and Kamada is now fit and is coming in and is definitely preferred. Those two are preferred to Lerma and Hughes. Hughes is kind of like their inferior Yates, I would say, to a certain degree. But what I would say is that Wharton and Kamada are their engine. And you're going to have Wharton. He's truly box to box. He's about 50% defensive, 50% attacking of what he does. He's absolutely everywhere, although slightly more on the right-hand side deployed. Kamada comes across, he's slightly more attacking. So he does spend slightly more time in an attacking role of the two. And he's slightly more advanced to support then the two that then sit as the 10s, which are Eze and Sarr. And they are problematic. Like Eze speaks for himself of how problematic he is. And actually, if you see some of the quality of the goals that he scored in the last couple of games, it's actually quite frightening of him getting back to his absolute best. Even though Palace seem to have dipped, he is still performing quite well. And in the cup semi-final, he scored. Wow, my word! Sarr's not shabby on this as well. He's got 7 goals and 4 assists as well. So he is a threat in himself, and we cannot discount Sarr when trying to pick this up. And Mateta, well, Mateta's Mateta. We all know about Mateta. Even though he looks like Zorro at the moment, it hasn't diminished anything about his skill set. He's got back up and running really quickly, and he is. Whenever we look at Wood's stats of how ridiculous his shot conversion to goals is, like 1 in 3, and he was like that last season, he's like this season. Mateta, last season and this season, has been the person who has been in lockstep and even better than Wood in some cases at converting his shots into goals. That is how lethal he actually is. And why we're looking at him going, is there any way we can poach him potentially? So that's really where they are. When it looks at the midfield is the engine, but you're not getting like a Bruno Fernandes raider that comes up with goals. You don't have Wharton or Kamada that are scoring goals whatsoever. Wharton's only got 2 assists to him. Kamada's got none. But they are the creators to enable the 2 wing backs to fly on. So you effectively end up getting attacking 5 that sit there with potentially 4 that are supporting Mateta right across the line and intertwining on their sides between Eze and Mitchell intertwining, being really hard to pick up, and Sarr and Munoz intertwining, being really hard to pick up. So if you're thinking, yes, it's brilliant we've got Ola back, but Williams and Ola are going to need support on both of their sides. And that's why we probably see Dominguez, and maybe only, even if Callum is fit, we only see only Elanga, because we're going to need that doubling down on each of the flanks to help dry that all up, basically, and block that all off, so they can't just keep feeding Mateta, as it were. So that's pretty much what I would say. If we look at their form, and the form dipped off, there is a reason their form dipped off. If you look at their fixtures, it was like Arsenal draw, going backwards in time. Most recently, Arsenal draw, Bournemouth draw, Newcastle pumped, Man City pumped. They won at Brighton, but they did actually draw at Southampton. So although their form's gone off, they've been playing really good teams, but they have got, when they lost, they've lost badly. So it's really difficult to tell where they actually are. And they turned up big time in their semi-final and blew away a very, very buoyant and very good Villa team. So there is the danger there. We just don't really know. They are slightly better away from home, though. They've won 5 at home and they've won 6 away from home. And their wins at home have been Brighton, Ipswich, Villa, Southampton and Spurs. So it's not all top teams. It's not all bottom teams. But again, those wins at home have all been exceedingly recent. They've been, well, most of them have been quite recent in that purple patch of form that they had before it started falling off a bit. So that's Palace, and going there is always tough, but that's really why it is tough. And they're effectively 5 people to really worry about and shut down.
Okay,
yeah, I was going to say one real quick thing too. If you look at how they're scoring the goals, they lead the Premier League in set piece goals. Yeah. So, given our form related to that, and given the fact they have Richards, Lacroix, Mateta, I mean, they've got definite
big
threats. Yeah, and like you mentioned at the beginning of the match, beginning of this episode, you talked about that cheap corner that Murillo gave as sort of an indicator of where things are going to go, right? Just how switched off we may have been mentally in the match. Yeah, so we got to be very, very careful. No cheap corners in this match. Yeah, indeed.
Okay, thank you very much.
I've seen more tackle on Pornhub. Bloody hell!
Righty, okay, that takes us to the hour mark, guys. So we will finish things there. I'm going to go round the guys. Just give us anything else you want to say briefly on the Palace match coming up, or even on the Brentford match from last night. But I also want to try and grab a score prediction from you for Monday night as well. I know that these things now are becoming a little bit difficult to predict. Raf, I'll start with you.
Thanks so much. Yeah. Right. What I would say is that I still subscribe to good old Paul Morley when we were kind of coming into the last round of 10 games and it was broken down and he put them into pairs. And it was basically 1 home game and 1 away game it was set up with. And we looked at all the home games going, cool, we can win those. And then we've got a free hit for our away games. And we win. If we get 3 points between 2 games for the rest of the season, we are cushy. I still think the same applies if you look at the fixtures that everyone else has got, and we stuffed it against Everton. We beat Spurs, right? And that was the opposite way around of what we thought was going to happen. We've lost against Brentford, and I was not hopeful going to Palace. I thought we'd get a draw at best, but who knows? It might be that actually we reverted to our amazing away form that we had in the first half of the season. I don't know. I'm not going to be that optimistic, though. I do think that it's probably going to end up being something like 1-1. And I'm actually hopeful that it's 1-1 just after the fact of our very lethargic display. And we don't have that much rest before we're playing again in 4 days' time. And they're not going to rest anyone. They've got 2 weeks until their game at Wembley by the time we play them. So I think they'll go full strength for our game and then rest for the game afterwards.
Okay, so you're going 1-1. Thanks, Raf. I have put on the screen the remaining fixtures, the table that Richard put together from somewhere, just to kind of
our form, nice and red.
Yeah, it's Dan's table. Yeah,
as Dan's. Sorry, beg your pardon. And so, Danscape, over to you for your score prediction. Any final thoughts, mate?
The trouble has been in these last 2 home games is that they're teams that, on their day they can come and they can frustrate you. And I think the change in dynamic for us is that now we're a team at the top of the table playing at home. Teams come with that expectation that they're going to just come and frustrate us. And it's been a bad couple of games to have. I think our last couple of home games will be different in that respect, in that I don't think Leicester are any good at doing that. And Chelsea aren't that good at doing that either. There'll be more goals in those games. So I think just looking ahead, that's hopefully where things will change around for us. And I said it before the Spurs game, in that when it's like that and when the expectation level's there because these teams are below us in the league and you're at home, maybe it's actually easier to play away. You sort of, going to Palace, I think people would probably see us as the underdogs a bit. And it's a little bit different dynamic where we can go there and we can just smash and grab it, a bit like we did at Spurs. We can turn up, try and get the goal or 2 we need and do it that way, rather than feeling like we've got to put on a performance and really dominate a team because we're at home and we're 5th and they're 12th or whatever, that kind of thing. So maybe that helps us. It's tough. Look, the short turnaround is going to make it really tough. Obviously, Palace have had that bit extra time to rest and recover, and they have got players that within a split second can do something that completely changes the game. So very hard to predict, basically, is what I'm saying. It could be one of absolutely any scoreline, and I think I've gone with the draw in the podcast prediction league. Obviously, I really hope it's a win, because I think we've just dipped below the European Dream Tracker top 5 line after that game by 1 point now.
All
so we need
season,
to get back to the line. So I'm going to say that we win it 2-1, hopefully, but it could be anything.
Fantastic stuff. So we've got 2-1 out of Danscape. Richard, what can we get out of you?
Yeah, my heart says I want to go 1-0 win, as I predicted in the last one, which clearly didn't work out very well. But I would say that I'm going to go with Raf. I think we're going to get a draw. I think a point is a good point. It's an away match, as you said, Dan, against a sort of cagey, difficult. Well, I think you were talking about previous teams, but I think Palace can be a bit difficult as well, and especially in their own stadium. So I'm going to say 1-1. I think we get a point, but that's a good point. We just need to get to some positive momentum, get some points back on the boards. Clearly, 3 points, I think, really reshapes what we do for the remainder of the fixtures, because I think we definitely have a real opportunity in the next week, because if we can somehow get that 3 points, I feel like we can take Leicester at home, because we're going to be very confident. We won't see what we've seen in performance-wise at home. And I think we'll have a real trajectory towards Champions League at that point, especially with playing West Ham the week after. So, and next week, I think there's some opportunity with other teams in terms of who they're playing, because a couple of them are playing each other that are vying for that 5th spot, and that might help us as well. But I'm going to go 1-1. I think we just get that draw, because it has been the history with them at Selhurst Park. We just don't seem to be able to get a win. So I'll take it, though, because I'd rather walk away with that point with some positive momentum than end up walking away with a loss. So 1-1.
Okay, I think I'm with you guys. I'm going to say 0-0. I think that I've been to games at Palace, and it's just got 0-0 for me written all over it. I don't think it's a good point. I think we have to win. If we want to get into the Champions League, my opinion is that we have to win against Palace, Leicester and West Ham. Because I'm looking at game week 37, guys. I'm looking at game week 37 now, and I'm seeing Villa play Tottenham at home and Chelsea play Man United at home. Now, both of those teams are going to be in the Europa League final, which is on that game week is the one that's a few days before the final. The final's the 21st of May. So I'm thinking Tottenham and Man United are going to be all about the Europa League final when they play each other. That's what's going to happen. They're 3-1 up and 3-0 up respectively. I'd be astonished if they both don't make it. So Spurs and Man United going into game week 37 against Villa and Chelsea respectively are going to rest a shitload of players. And that, to me, makes me think that Villa and Chelsea are going to win those games. They might have won them anyway, but that, again, it stands out. Chelsea play Liverpool next, and they play Newcastle away. So we need to really, if we, again, are thinking about Champions League and hoping that others don't do as well as they have been, because we are now, I think, at that point. And I hate being at that point. It's all about what we do. But ultimately, we have stumbled and we are stumbling. So we need Liverpool, who someone just mentioned in the comments, Slot has said, he's going to do a rotation on players. Well, he's got that privilege now. They've won the league. He has that as in his gift to do that. He can give minutes now to players that need game time to get a medal, and that's the bottom line. So ultimately, depending on the likes of Liverpool, who might still be on the piss come Sunday, I'm hoping that when they get a guard of honour from Chelsea, that they're not going to be rolling over and having their tummies tickled. I still feel the hope they're going to want to turn up. So I feel we need to go to Palace and get 3 points. I don't think we're going to do it though. I think we're going to end up getting a point. So like I said, I'm worried about game week 37. Game week 38, Villa have got Man United in the last game of the season. So will they be worn out from having played in the Europa League final and maybe won it? I don't know. So, Villa are the ones that I'm now all of a sudden worried about, given that they've got, a couple of games coming up, Fulham and Bournemouth. So, look, we can do ourselves an injury mentally by looking at this table too much. But
if we had
going back
to
to what I've said,
I'd have a different outlook.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, a lot of those teams would rather be in our position. They're probably looking, well, look at Forest. They've got to go Palace. But ultimately, we are the ones that are slipping. We have slipped and we haven't capitalised. So, look, if we end up in the Europa League, it's still an effing amazing season. It still is. I mean, obviously, the financial reward of Champions League football we've spoken about would be huge for us. But if it means that we end up in the Europa, oh my God, considering where we come from, it will still be absolutely fantastic. And we go and win the Europa and we get Champions League next year. But I guess I just wanted to kind of say that I'd noticed that game week 37 to me with Europa League football, and then both. Listen, I said it in our group chat. It's going to stick in the throat that we've had a really good season and Tottenham and Man United have been terrible, and one of them is going to get in the Champions League. And that's sticking in the throat more than anything. And if we don't get it, I think I'll die. But there we go.
Greg, very quickly, what is still key though, and again, I did say to everyone online, I'm going to try and bring some positivity. So I'll end on a positive note. Right? We are in that pair. We go win at Palace and everything is straight back on track again. Right? It's all fine. Yeah. And technically, because of who's playing each other, we still have our destiny in our hands for Champions League. We take care of our business. It doesn't matter what anyone else does. We get Champions League. And even though we're in sixth, we actually still have destiny in our hands. So it's all still positive. We can do this. Forest always do it the hard way. Always do it the hard way. So that's what we're doing. And it will feel even sweeter if we do it the hard way and get it.
Go on, Dan.
Just game by game. I'm just trying to pretend to be new now. We'll go back to that. He needs to start saying that again, I think. Game by game. Not many left, but still 3 points. That's it. That's all that's on offer for this next couple of days. So let's just focus on that.
Will mentioned this earlier, but he says Danscape always puts it into perspective, makes you feel a bit better. He does indeed. Will's also saying again, Liverpool going to rotate. They still have a great squad. That's true. Pat Brett's been with us. He says we are out of gas, out of form. I will take any Europe now. And listen, when you've sat in the Champions League places for as long as we have, though, it does still kind of sting a little bit. It is a bit of a kick in the nuts when you don't get it, and you don't want all those people that are going to be smoking saying, "Oh, well, I knew you were going to slip out." It's still there. So look, we're going to end on a positive. Raf, you're right. It's in our hands. It's in our hands. We go on Monday night again. If you're traveling to Selhurst Park, make a load of noise. Get behind the team. They need you more than ever. We've got a multitude of players this season that have stood out, and we're going to be doing, Richard and I, a very special Player of the Season episode where all of our contributors have added something to that episode, and you'll see what that looks like when that goes out, hopefully next week. But in the meantime, Talking Reds, we're signing off. We'll see you soon.
Come join Greg and Richard right here on Talking.